on and off when when you are speaking. Sorry, everybody. Merry Christmas. When you're speaking. Right. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you, Jonathan Corsten, as the independent person. We'll move on to the first item 1 on the agenda. Apologies for absence.
There are no apologies for absence.
Brilliant, thank you. Declaration of interest. No declaration of interest. Okay, we'll move on to the minutes of the meeting, 25th of September 2025. Page 1. Just shout out. Yes, Jonathan.
Can I just add that I was in attendance in the last meeting. My name's not on there.
Okay, thank you. We note that, please. Thank you. Still on page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Page 9. Okay, if anybody's got any corrections, nobody's got any corrections, can I have a show of hands, a true and accurate reflection of the minutes other than the one note that we've made from Jonathan? Okay, thank you. It's on it here. Okay. Right, there's a slight alteration on the agenda. Item 4 is being moved to item 5 and everything on from that, as item 6 is being moved to item 4. Item 6 is the RIPRA review presented by Rachel Clack. Okay, thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm grateful for the change in the running order. I'm here this evening on behalf of the Monitoring Officer and Assistant Director of Law, Governance and HR to deliver the annual update report on the regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 2000, or RIPA as it's known. The Investigatory Powers Commissioner's Office requires that councillors are updated annually on the council's use of powers under those under RIPA to ensure compliance with the legislation. Under RIPA, local authorities have the power to authorise directed surveillance, usually covert cameras or covert observations by officers, and the use of covert human intelligence sources, essentially undercover officers are conducting surveillance. And this is allowed where it's considered necessary for the prevention and detection of crime or preventing disorder, and if the surveillance is proportionate to the aims it seeks to achieve, and an authorisation must have judicial approval from a Justice of the Peace through Nottingham Magistrates Court. So authorisations under RIPA can only be given by authorising officers who, for Rushcliffe Borough Council, are the Chief Executive, the Director for Neighbourhoods and the Head of Service for Public Protection. Under the Council's RIPA policy, councillors are required to consider and review the Council's use of RIPA powers and its policy and guidance at least once a year. And this is the Senior Responsible Officer undertakes an audit of RIPA usage, and I can confirm that there have been no authorisations given for directed surveillance or the use of covert human intelligence sources since the last update report. I'm also required in line with the council's policy to ensure that training on RIPA is available to officers on a regular basis. Again, that training has been undertaken, and I can confirm that each of the authorising officers has also undertaken training in respect of the authorisation process and criteria to consider. And also, in addition to the internal annual audit, policy review and report to scrutiny, every 3 years the Investigatory Powers Commissioner's Office carry out an inspection of the council's records and interview relevant officers to ensure there is compliance with legislation. The last such review was in November, was in 2023, and the RIPA policy was updated in line with IPCO's recommendations. And the council is due its next inspection next year in 2026. So I've also undertaken the annual review of the council's RIPA policy and can confirm that there are no material updates that are required. And yeah, and the last update took into account the Covert Surveillance Code of Practice, which was published by the Home Office in February 2024, and the policy was updated accordingly at that time. And the most up-to-date version of the policy is attached to the report as Appendix 1. And then the recommendations are on page 32 of the agenda pack. And it's requesting that the members of Governance Scrutiny Group consider and note the information contained within the report regarding the council's use of RIPA powers, and acknowledges the senior responsible officer's annual review of the council's RIPA policy, again attached to Appendix 1 to this report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Rachel. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Chair. When was the last time surveillance was used by this council?
Thank you, Councillor Wells. I think we'll have to check, but my understanding is that this council has never had cause to use RIPA powers.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? I think it's fairly straightforward, isn't it? It's in the document, so it would be, unless you've got any pressing questions, I will move it forward as to the recommendations. Recommendations, we don't need a vote. Recommending the Governance Scrutiny Group consider the notes and the information contained within the report regarding the council's use of RPI powers, which it seems to be 0. Acknowledge the senior responsible officer's annual review of the council's RPI policy, which is attached in the appendix of this report. So duly noted. Thank you very much. Rachel, I understand that you need to leave, so have a very Merry Christmas and have a good evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Over from what was item 4 to item 5, which is the internal audit progress report presented by Max Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair. So this is our standard quarterly progress report, summarising the work done in our internal audit plan for the year. So I'm going to start on page 17 of your packs, which is our table we present each progress report, which shows the work done so far and what you can expect to see throughout the rest of the year. So as you'll see from the table, 5 of the 9 reports are fully final for the year. 1 is in draft and 1 has field work ongoing, with the final 2 reports due to come in June 2026 and 2 more in February. So the headline is we're online and on time with our audit plan and expect to be able to do that with our annual report come the end of the year. So the 2 audit reports finalised in the quarter, which you've got exec summaries of, are main financial systems and business continuity and emergency planning. So I'll start on the main financial systems summary and give a quick presentation of that. This is a review which we do annually, main financial systems. It seems part of our core assurance to support our annual opinion at the end of the year. what we do as part of this review is cover different areas of the main financial systems each year. So we've done treasury in the past, areas around accounts receivable, all those core areas. This year it was accounts payable and procurement card use. The accounts payable side covers the process from purchase order to payment, including non-purchase order invoices, and then the procurement card assesses the use and administration, particularly around procurement cards, which seems a higher area of risk because naturally it's payment at the point of sale. And the approval comes after. So we provided moderate assurance over the design and substantial over the effectiveness, with one medium finding and one low. To touch on the medium finding quickly, so this was in relation to the procurement card logs, critically not the use, the administration of the logs. So there were within our sample of card transactions late submissions to the finance team to show, for example, the receipts, the invoices, what those cards were used for. We partly raise this as a medium risk because it is naturally more risky due to the nature of the area. However, what is important to say is we didn't identify any misuse of cards in there. So it's not to say because the administration wasn't right that the use wasn't right. Positively, again, you'll see from particularly part B of the management response, actions already been taken to log card use, to chase up card holders to ensure they are providing receipts promptly after the month end. There was also a low finding around the written confirmations for a temporary increase in someone's card limit. This was for a valid reason. It was due to staffing changes. Someone's card limit was increased to allow them to cover a role above them, but just having a written audit trail to show the authorization of that was absent in this case. And the business continuity and emergency planning review. So we provided substantial assurance over design and effectiveness with 2 low findings. This review covered the council's arrangements for business continuity planning, training around business continuity plans, which is critical for people to understand what to do in the event of an incident, and also things like scenario penetration testing, all those areas which you'd expect to see, again, to ensure that the people understand the plan and it is clear in the event of an incident. What this review is not to say is that in the event of an incident, we can guarantee 100% sure that the response will be perfect. Obviously, every incident is nuanced and different. Our review covers what are the broader planning arrangements in place at a corporate level and also at a service level. So to touch on the 2 low findings. So the first is, if I'm honest, it's an area we don't often see in local government, but I think it's becoming more prevalent. So holding a multi-year training program of forward planning for what sort of scenario testing training will happen for business continuity planning. The broader landscape is there are more threats that are emerging from the traditional and historic business continuity threats. So, for example, we're seeing more in the cyberspace and threats that we don't know about even today are arising. And also in other areas, you will have seen in the news over the last year around sort of public disorder, civil unrest, and other potential threats to local authorities. So having a multi-year plan to ensure all those areas are covered, we feel would be prudent, albeit there was quite a lot of activity around scenario testing. So there's been a cyber scenario testing with the support of the LGA in the last 6 months, and particularly after storms that have occurred during the year, there's been lessons learned exercises to identify what went wrong or what could have been better, and building on that. And finally, on this review, there were gaps around the action plans. Within the business continuity plan, you've got an action plan with 9 clear steps to be taken. We felt that could have been slightly stronger around the prioritisation of actions, and then reporting back into the executive management team on the progress of those actions. To ultimately to enhance the action plan, improve oversight and monitoring. Finally, we've got a sector update in the report, but I'm going to take a slightly different approach, which is there's been a significant headline since this report was published, and that was the budget last week. So I'm just going to touch on a few points probably more prevalent to local government rather than touching on the articles within the sector update that were announced in last week's budget. So the key ones, which are again quite well publicised in terms of the announcements, were around council tax changes, particularly the surcharge and the administration impact that will have on local authorities, who will be obviously required to administer that. And the business rates revaluation from the 1st of April, which again will be for local authorities to administer. The announcement did include a statement to say that local authorities will be fully compensated for the administration costs, but obviously we'll see how that bears out in the coming few years as these additional requirements come in. There are announcements around additional investment in planning to recruit more planners. I think this is an area we've seen across local authorities as a gap in resources, and there's a lot of challenge around recruiting planners, but obviously to deliver headline targets around building more homes, that is a key area of focus. And then to touch on one other area, there was an announcement around licensing, which I know we've discussed at this committee before. And it was quite clear as a steer from government to say there should be more of a consideration around growth in decision making. And there was an announcement of a national licensing policy framework, which would set more of a one-size-fits-all approach to licensing. There were far more announcements. I could probably sit here for an hour telling you about all the budget announcements, but they're probably some of the key headlines I wanted to talk about this committee. I'll stop there and invite any questions.
Okay, thank you. No questions? Yes, Councillor.
Thank you. Starting where you've just left off, without going into detail of the budget announcement, presumably impact on that will be addressed in future reports, because you do it. I understand why you skirted around the edges of it tonight, and I really understand why. But obviously, the more detail will emerge over the next few months and beyond, because one of the things you talked about is compensating councils for the expenditure. I don't believe that'll ever happen, because it never has under any political banner before. So don't for 1 minute think it'll happen under this political banner, simply going by history. So that could have quite severe implications, couldn't it? Or could it?
So without, I guess, giving almost a foresight view on what will happen in the next few years.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry.
Probably come to the start of that question. So in terms of future impacts on our plan and general reporting, so BDO have put out announcements following the budget on our website and within the sort of LinkedIn and other social networking areas around budget announcements. Again, not taking a political stance, more about these are what are being as potential impacts of that. As part of our audit plan, which we're starting the planning for, which will come to this committee in February, the broader landscape of risk is a prevalent factor in our audit planning, and we'll sit with Sarah and Pete and other execs to build that plan. Obviously, some of these announcements in the budget may factor into the planning as well that will come before this committee going forward. I mean, the reality is the budget is primarily an announcement. What then follows is guidance for what will actually happen. So we'll find out more, I think, as months go by.
Thank you. You very helpfully put on markers this evening, which is exactly what we expected you to do, and you have. You never disappoint us, so thank you for that. Something else, can I, Chris?
Yes.
You mentioned business continuity there, right at the bottom there, the finding. As a marker, how do we compare against other authorities that you've actually been in and done audits on? It's an, as you said, it's an area which is giving us some cause for concern at the moment, understandably, because of the various challenges we face. Do you expect the council to do a full business continuity exercise? I know it mentions the report, just little snapshots of it. Do you expect a full business continuity exercise to take place each year or every second year or whatever?
So I guess there's probably a few parts of that question. So in terms of the benchmarking piece to other authorities, so we don't often provide substantial assurance on business continuity. But actually within this council and the broader council network in Nottinghamshire, there are arrangements. So Nottinghamshire provides business continuity support to the council and emergency planning. Obviously, the council's got its own business continuity plan, but there is resource within the county council to support more broadly, which is a kind of strong arrangement that's been identified within our report. In terms of it's hard to put a definitive timeline on exactly what should be covered in each year. Ultimately, it's the risks that are there now may not be there, and it might be something completely different this time next year. So there is a challenge in saying we'll cover everything this year, because there's also resource implications to that. I think what is, and that's why we raise it as a low risk fund rather than higher or medium. We think it would be prudent to develop a multi-year plan to ensure actually more broad coverage of potential threats that the council could prepare for. What is required by local authorities is a full business continuity plan, which is obviously is in place, but the actual training and scenario testing, we see as more of a lower risk but more prudent approach to develop that multi-year plan. Part of another reason why it's low is because there is other things that are happening within the council that it's more ad hoc, but there is ongoing scenario testing which is helping to ultimately provide preparedness and assurance over the business continuity arrangements.
Very helpful, thank you.
I was just going to ask on procurement cards. Did you review how many are issued and to what level of seniority of staff? Because obviously the more there are, the more risk there is, I guess.
So part of our review, so obviously we picked our sample across a range of card holders. We wouldn't give a view as to who the card holders are. Is that appropriate? Partly it's a council decision as to, because it's more role dependent. People who may need, who spend a lot of time away from the office and may need it at the point of sale. So that's a management decision. I don't have the figures to hand of the exact number of card holders, but Sarah, you may know more. I don't think there's a huge amount of card holders, was there?
No, off the top of my head, I don't know the exact number, but it's maybe 14. It's not, it's not a huge number. And as Max rightly said, it's a decision operationally of who has that card, and usually management will make that decision for officers in their team, and the limit that they are given will be correspond to the role and the sort of expenditure that they need to make on a regular basis.
Thank you, Sharon. My question is related to scenarios on the business continuity planning. Are those scenarios a mix of physical controls and financial and policy controls, and how often we test those scenarios, please?
So in terms of the scenarios, it's partly, well, they can be done in very different ways. So it can cover all of those areas that you mentioned. So to give an illustration of one the council have done, provided by the LGA around cybersecurity scenario, it's playing out a situation that could arise and that response to that. So it's more of a pragmatic approach, I would say, to ensure that ultimately, potentially when a scenario arises, it's not the first time that people are playing out that situation and they've got a bit of preparedness for it. So it could take place in many different ways. Typically what we would see is a more practical scenario where people are essentially mimicking a real or mocking a real life situation that could happen, and testing how that would be done in line with the existing policies that are in place and the agreed approach.
Sorry, I was just going to add to that as well, that part of when we do the exercises, the officers that are in the room at the time are from those multiple different service areas. And what happens, and the point of doing those exercises is it generates a thought process where, for example, in my area, I think from a finance perspective, what do I need to make sure is in place? And that happens for each of the different service areas. So whilst they might not specifically be testing the response in that area, the work that comes out of that and the plans that develop from that are generated in that environment.
So my additional question was related to the IT side of it, actually. For example, firewall fails or website fails or some kind of data center. So how do we test those scenarios, basically?
So as Max referred to, we did have a separate session on cyber, a cyber disaster, but we do have backup plans and they regularly test the systems, the individual systems within the council as well. So whether they back up and things like that. And so they're all run through on a regular basis to see whether the information can be restored to the point of failure. And that's a regular test that the council has to go through within the ICT department to give that reassurance.
Are all the scenarios department based, or are there cross organisational scenarios as well?
There can be both. So whole organisation, if it's a wide, complete computer outage or something like that, but also scenario based as well. For example, flooding might be contained to a specific area.
Max, or probably the question to Sarah, you talked about approval limits on cards and this kind of stuff, and kind of, do the card holders have individual approved amounts they have? And in my own experience, a card at the university I work with, I have a 10,000 individual transaction limit. Is that apply here as well?
So Sarah, maybe that's the rationale for those limits, but yes, each individual has a specified card holder limit. It's not one blanket limit across all cards, it is per individual card. The rationale for that, Sarah, I don't know if you want to come in on that at all for each individuals.
So individuals, may be that we've got somebody on an arts events team might only need to buy small purchases, refreshments, that sort of thing. But for example, if we've got the homelessness team, they might need on an emergency to house somebody, overnight. They might need to pay for a bed and breakfast, multiple bed and breakfasts, so their limits would be higher. And we do have the ability to do temporary increases for an emergency. So we keep the limits as low as possible on an operational basis. And if needed, we could increase the limit for an emergency.
That's good to hear. It's not like a blanket limit across everyone. There is a proper, organisational need for each individual card holder. That's great. Thanks.
To my questions, I'm glad to see that people have dug down on the cards. Is there any document that says what the card should be used for? What's the process for authorization of the use of the card? Is it, I'm just using my card? So what's the governance, the framework document for the appropriate use of the card, and if it goes out of the appropriate use of card, what processes and systems are in place to address that?
So there's two pretty key documents. One is the council's financial regulations, but the more specific document is the procurement card holder regulation. So that sets out what the permissible use of the card. Obviously, it can't cover everything as one document, so it's got to be applied on a slightly logical basis, but that sets out what it can and can't be used for. In terms of the process side, which I think is critical, all card logs are sent to the finance team to moderate and assess, does that align with what is expected for that card holder? Is it reasonable spend? It's a bit of a judgment call, but does it align with that policy framework? In terms of the, if there was to be misuse of cards, obviously, to be clear, we didn't see that within our sample. However, the policies do set out there are escalation procedures in the council, whether that be sort of withdrawing of cards, disciplinary action, all those standard procedures you'd expect. But we didn't see that within our sample, it's important to say, so there were no instances of that happening.
So just to confirm, an officer who is supplied with a card can potentially misuse the card. There is no check or balance to say, I'm potentially using this card. Are you okay with that to another person, more senior person, or is there a sign off of agreement, or is it, the Wild West where anybody can sort of dig into that card? In the unlikely event it's misused, how would we, because once it's misused, we're firefighting then. What proactive measures of control of those cards are in place? Because a number of cards mount up to a lot of money. Well, one card could, because we don't know what the agreed balance is on that card. What's the rationale of agreeing the balance on the card? One officer has a card with £10,000, another officer has a card for £2,000. How have we arrived at that 10,000 and that 2,000? Can you sort of explain that to me?
So if I just come in quickly first, Sarah, that's again, I'll pass over to Sarah for the management decision, probably side of it. In fairness, procurement cards are naturally more risky. They're needed for the practical element of purchases. For example, Sarah alluded to temporary accommodation need to be made at the point of sale. That
can I just come in? I understand the need for the card. What I'm concerned about on a governance point of view is how we regulate and check, and how, rather than having a quarterly audit, which will find something that could have happened 3 months before, how do we regulate that? I'm uncomfortable that somebody can use their own common sense, if there is such a thing, to make a purchase without actually having authorization from a second person. You know, that balance. I'm just conscious that it's a bit loose in my opinion there.
I'll just come in there, and perhaps the audit maybe didn't cover, or the audit report rather didn't cover all the points of that you referred to there. So the officer that's been allocated the card first of all goes through training, is made aware of what is official spend that they're allowed to spend that on, how they're supposed to treat a card, that they're not supposed to share their card with anybody else, or their PIN number, all of the usual things that you would expect from your own personal bank cards. When they've done that, they sign to say that they accept that and they're taking responsibility for it. So it's, you know, they have got a responsibility for that card and for the spend on it. Before they make any spend on the card, they are expected to get approval from their line manager. So the line manager will say, yes, you can buy X or Y. And then when they've done that, the card is submitted. We, as Max said, finance get the payments that have gone on each card, and the report that we get from the bank specifically lists, itemized all the transactions for that card holder. So it's not one long list, it's per card holder. And the card holder is then expected to submit their receipts that go with that, also signed by the same line manager that authorised the payments. At that point, they would identify anything that's not on the card, and it has happened where we've had something, not from officer, I might add, where error is on the card, something that we expect to be on there isn't on there. So those sort of things are raised with the bank immediately, within, you know, a day or two of receiving the statement. And if there were anything untoward on there, so finance do check that those payments are within line of what we would expect the cards to be used for. We would raise that with the line manager initially and higher up if needed to be, in line with our procedures.
Okay, thanks. And how do we arrive at the sum on a card?
That would be individual discussions between line managers, dependent upon, as I said before, the responsibilities of that role. So, for example, we have limits as low as £1,000 that can be spent, perhaps even lower, and some up to 10,000, maybe higher if there was a need to use for that particular reason. But it's done on an individual basis with line manager consultation, and it's reviewed on a regular basis.
Is that formally done? Is there a process that we followed that could be audited against to arrive at that sum, or is it a chat with the line manager and we've agreed the amount?
It is documented, but you wouldn't expect to have a calculation as such. But it's a documented conversation between line manager and manager for how much that limit should be.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. I'm moving on to. Has anybody got any questions flowing from my questions? Okay, Councillor Egan.
Excuse me, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I don't have a question that flows from your question. I have a question about the original report, if I may. Was the council affected by the recent the second Cloudflare outage? Have we had is it covered? It's covered in your IT section, but it might be too recent.
So that specific outage was not covered as part of this review. So I don't know what the broader answer is. Sarah may be able to answer on that, but it wasn't covered as part of this audit.
I'm not aware of a direct impact on the council's systems, but I believe it did impact on one of our third-party providers on taking card payments. I'd have to check, you know, whether it actually impacted on the ability to take payments and how long it was out for, but it didn't affect ours directly.
Yes.
Happy, right, okay. Okay, right, okay. On to my second part of the questions. The relationship between the risk register, risk profiling, and the business continuity plan. What is the relationship between the three processes?
So just for clarity on that question, so in terms of where the key risks are identified, is that probably where we're steering this.
Yeah, I mean, you talked, there's lots of emerging risks to the business. You would expect that to be in the risk register, and managed and worked upon within the risk register. So there's no point in having a plan that we don't know what we're planning for. You know, the cyber security, if the council's computer systems went down or financial systems went down, is that on the risk register? And are we happy that the business continuity plan is robust enough for its generic use for the council to actually use in practice?
Yeah, so in terms of the first part around the risk registers and the relationship there, so that is a separate process around risk management. So I won't go into much detail on that because we haven't covered that necessarily more broadly. But there is obviously a risk register comes to this committee every 6 months. And I understand there are processes within the council around risk management, identifying risks, ensuring that ultimately the document is lean enough where it's not too cumbersome, but does identify those key risks. Particularly around the second part of the question on business continuity and planning for those key risks. So our overall view on the business continuity plan was it was sufficiently robust and in line with what we'd expect to see for a local authority. What it does not do is list every single potential risk and scenario that could happen. It's a more broader document with then local service plans, service areas having their direct business continuity plans for particular risks that could happen within that service. So for certain systems maybe that would sit within finance or HR or IT, whatever that system is, which provides more detail as to how they would recover those systems and bring them back into use or find alternative solutions. So to answer the question, overall, yes, we were comfortable with the robustness of those business continuity plans at a corporate and service level area, which is then supported within our opinion.
Okay, thank you. I'm just a bit confused that we wouldn't, because they're all inextricably linked as disciplines. So when auditing an at the end part of the process, because the other two parts of the process are the beginning and the middle, to get to the end, because all these risks need to be identified that will prevent the business moving forward through risk register, risk profiling in the individual areas. So I'm just, without looking at the document in its entirety myself, I just think, is this document fit for purpose? You're telling me it is, but if things go wrong, does it address the things so the council operationally can click into emergency situation and use the document in practice?
So sorry, in terms of the bit in practice, so overall that is what the business continuity plan and the action plan together do. They provide a framework, not necessarily saying for this exact scenario this is what would happen. They're more broader levels of responsibilities and roles to ensure that ultimately it's got a flexibility for to respond and react to a situation. So that's kind of the focus of where the review was within that. I don't know if that answers your question directly, but that's kind of where the focus of the review was, to look at the continuity plan. Obviously, naturally, we are limited to a certain number of scopes or a certain size of scope in the days. There's only obviously so much you can do. So risk management might be an area that comes up separately as a review, but ultimately our assessment was around the business continuity plan, the preparation of that and the broader robustness around how that sets out the roles, responsibilities, duties, and then the training of staff who have those responsibilities to respond to an incident.
Okay, thanks for that. It's clear that you haven't got that information, but moving forward, maybe we need to address that moving forward, that all these disciplines with synergies need to be linked together to have a seamless operation, because there's no point in all these disciplines operating in silo, because all it will do is create a very bad omelette in the end, because we've smashed a lot of eggs and we're not putting them together very well, as I see it. But obviously I'm not being paid to do the auditing job, so but thank you very much for
just to add to that, obviously you mentioned about risk and the link with business continuity. The risks are fluid, so they're changing throughout the year all the time. So it's down to sort of officers in this group to make sure that those risks are, the risk registers move with those risks as they change. And we incorporate that into the business continuity plans, which again is at a point in time and requires update when new risks that we deem appropriate enough to need a plan. As Max said, it's just those sort of really critical risks that we have a plan for. That's then put into action so that officers do know what to do in the event of that happening. So they are sort of all linked. It's just a matter of whether we update those risks and how that update gets in there. I think that's what you were saying, that, weren't you?
Yeah, Sarah, I'm sorry for asking all quick questions, but that's our job.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what we're here to do, guys, as a scrutiny group, is to ask questions of the authority and or the officers that do our bidding, and that's what we're here to do. So asking the questions in a public forum like this is doing our job. Okay, any more questions? Okay, we will move. Thank you very much, Max, for that. Sorry for the grilling. You're welcome to stick around if you wish. What can I say? But you're free to go if you wish. But yeah, he just wants to hear your dulcet tones, Councillor Wheeler. That's what it is. Right, okay, let's move on. Statement of accounts, I think we're on now, aren't we? I don't think I've missed one.
Okay.
Oh, because I've just done Max's. Oh, sorry, the recommendation. It's a record. Sorry, I've been really thrown out now, Councillor Wheeler. Thank you very much. It is recommended that the Governance Scrutiny Group consider Q2 Progress Report 2025-6 and Appendix A prepared by the Council's internal auditor. I think we've considered it. So no, is a vote need? No voting needed. So we've considered it. So we'll now move on. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks, Sarah. Okay, item 5, statement of accounts presented by Jennifer Norman.
Thank you, Chair. So it's a very brief update from external audit tonight because of where we're at in our annual reporting cycle. So you remember that the last edition of this committee in September, we brought our 2 annual reports. And it's always the case that we bring those reports to members when work is substantially complete, but there's always going to be some areas outstanding. Review, and then we have to get the final approved and signed documents and so on to be able to sign our audit opinion. However, I am pleased to report that we did sign our audit opinion on the 24th of November. This is one of the which allows Rushcliffe Borough Council to be able to publish its audited statement of accounts well in advance of the 27th of February deadline, and it will be one of the first councils in the country to do so, I can tell you that, although not the first. I think there's a couple up in Durham who are pretty quick. So there is a supplement, I believe, to your agenda pack, which is our audit completion report follow-up letter. So the purpose of this letter is, as the completion report is issued at a point in time, this follow-up letter comes to the council on the same date as the audit opinion, and it confirms that all of the areas that we said were outstanding have been concluded. There is also a mention of misstatements and a control point that either were not finalised in the case of the nil net book value assets, or were found as part of our review, which is often the case. So that's pretty much it for external audit. I'm very pleased to be able to say that we have signed off, and it was many thanks to the finance team for allowing us to get to this position. Of course, happy to take any questions about the audit, even if it's about the reports from before or anything else. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Any questions? Yes, Councillor.
This is regarding Appendix B, deficiencies in internal controls. So I think recommendation was consider system-based control. So have you implemented any system where 2 people, one is processing the journal and other is approving? So do we have 2 passwords and 2 logins? How it is working?
So the journal process, there isn't an in-system journal approval process because the risk is deemed low. The higher risk is of those journals of of £10,000, which is why that is reviewed. But again, that is on a report basis rather than in the system itself. And usually that's myself that reviews those journals that are above that threshold. But in this particular occasion, I had posted some journals myself. I don't usually sort of do the day job anymore, but because of resources in the team, I was sort of part of that process of closing down the accounts and hadn't had a second check on the journals that I'd posted. Ultimately, they are reviewed within reporting. So when the final accounts are done, Jenny and the team have reviewed everything that's gone through the accounts for valid balances, and also officers, budget holders review their final balances as well before we go through the closure process. So I'm pretty comfortable that anything that was wrong would have been spotted. But yeah, Jenny's picked that up, and we'll make sure in future, if I do get involved again during close down, that somebody else will review them.
So my question is there any plan to put any system-based control? Like 2 people will be writing the journals and other one is approving, or?
The system doesn't currently allow for that. It's not something I'm proposing to put in at the moment, but I will consider if there's ever an option in the future, whether that would be, a lot of it's to do with the resource that it takes to have an individual approve every single journal. It would take a long time for officers within the team to do that. So it's just balancing the risk of that with the time it takes to do it.
Any more questions?
Thanks, Chair. I see that the officer's pension is with Notts County Council. What will happen to that with the LGR? Have the officers looked into the other pension company? Would it stay with Nottinghamshire, or would it go somewhere else? Thank you.
I'm afraid I don't have the answers to that. I expect that the shadow authorities will come to those decisions themselves when the new authority is in being.
I think I might be able to answer that. I mean, but council pension schemes have they're governed. They have governors and they have overseers as the pot, and it's their responsibility by law to ensure that the funds are maintained. That's my understanding. So LGR can't really affect that fund. It's just held by and administered by the county council at present. So you would assume it would just go to one of the new authorities to manage it, but that would be done by the trustees of the fund. Having a county council pension myself, it's something that I've not really thought about, but I'm quite confident in the governance of pension funds within local authority. So does that answer your question? Yeah.
Well, mainly I was thinking that if Rushcliffe goes in with the city, have they got power to take the officers' pension of Rushcliffe away from county council and put it into their pension?
We're getting into very, very technical areas of splitting funds, but it's a final salary scheme anyway. So it's that would be down to the not negotiations, but it's governed. I'm guessing now you've got me splitting the authority up as it's not really come to mind. But when you transfer from, say you go from Leicester City and you're working for Leicester City and you then go for Nottinghamshire County Council, you transfer, but the funds are held, but those funds of your pension scheme is continual service. So they just sort of hop over and honour that final salary scheme.
Let's pick up what Jennifer said earlier on. It's in the report as well. Let's not forget, we are almost trailblazers on this. Jennifer said we're probably may not be the first, because two people in Durham or whatever it is sneaked under the radar.
Don't quote me on that.
We'll have a word with them on that one. Mustn't happen again. No, so on seriousness, it's an amazing result, isn't it? No wonder we are so well sought after in Rushcliffe. But no, wonderful. And thanks for all the work that's gone into this, with officers and of course your good selves. Let's not overlook that.
Thank you for that, Councillor Wheeler.
I echo what Councillor Wheeler just said as well. I want to thank Jenny and the team for being so efficient at doing the audit. Obviously, thanks go to my team as well for putting the work in, but it's a really good position to be in to have the audit complete and signed off at this point in time. So really pleased.
And now I've been guilted into it. Councillor Wheeler, thank you very much for all the hard work. Thank you.
Just on that point, I wanted to add, point of interest is that the deadline is going to, the plan is, even in light of LGR and the disruption that will cause, the plan is to bring the audited accounts deadline forward. So next year it will be earlier. So even though Rushcliffe is in such a good position, it is something that we kind of have been discussing, perhaps bringing forward the audit plan to an earlier committee. And but then I don't know how other councils around the country are going to cope because they're already behind. But that is something to maybe bear in mind, that in the future we are trying to rein it back in even more. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Any more questions? Okay, I think that's just a verbal update, so nothing to note other than the discussion we've had. But thank you everybody for contributing to that discussion. Okay, we're on to number 7 now. Capital investment strategy update presented by Marie Hetzel. Sorry, Marie, over to you.
Thank you. So this report summarises the second quarterly report for 25-26. It starts with a look at the economic forecast. Inflation has fallen from 3.8% in September to 3.6% in the year to October. Interest rates were held at 4% in a tight vote in November, but are expected to drop to 3.75% in December, with 2 further cuts anticipated early in the new year. The UK economy marginally expanded in quarter 3 with growth of 0.1%. Paragraph 4.4 to 4.9 looks at investment income. The council has budgeted to receive 1.4 million in interest receipts this year. Projections exceed this, roughly about 1.6 million. Appendix A shows a full list of investments held at the end of September. In October, the council actually invested 6 million in a secured bank deposit with Standard Chartered. For quarter 2, the council exceeded the budgeted average interest rate of 4.06%, given an average interest rate of 4.34%. Appendix B shows the fair value of the diversified funds, which have seen significant fluctuations over the last few years, but are held for long-term gains. The reserve to mitigate the loss is currently 1.31 million. These diversified funds return an average rate of 5.58%, over 150 basis points more than the money market funds, which are currently giving a rate of about 3.99%. Prudential indicators can be seen in Appendix C. Currently, a projected underspend on capital of around 1.5 million, arising primarily from the need to reprofile expenditure on warm homes to match grant allocation, and land acquisition for carbon offsetting not yet being committed. The council's underlying need to borrow for capital expenditure is called capital financing requirements. Table 3 shows a forecast reduction in internal borrowing after deducting MRP repayments. Net income from commercial and service investments to net revenue streams shows the projected figure is marginally higher than expected due to lower utility costs. The financing cost to net revenue stream indicator is 0.68% due to higher interest receipts reducing net financing costs. And the liability benchmark is shown in more detail in Table 1, paragraph 4.13, shows the credit balance, indicating the council has no need to borrow over the medium term. Commercial investments. Table 4 demonstrates our reliance upon commercial income. Currently, it is projected to account for 12.2% of total income to the council. Training and development. The next scheduled training session with Arlene Close is scheduled for the 6th of January. To conclude, the UK economy is still in a very fluid environment with falling interest rates and slow economic growth. Officers will continue to monitor the TM position throughout the year and report any significant issues to the group. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions, anyone? No questions? Oh, Councillor Owen.
Yes, on table 4 about commercial property income.
Yeah.
So has it gone down because it was 1979?
Sorry, it has dropped. The full year projection has fallen slightly, and that's because we have got vacancies on Bridgeford Hall and a couple of vacancies on the Point. So yeah, that is projected to be slightly less than budget.
Nothing specific.
Councillor Ware, your speaker needs to go on, mate.
Sorry, it's gone off. It's come back on now. I was always under the impression that the Point was fully let, in other words, full. Yet we've always had signs up the top there, illuminated signs saying vacant, vacant. Now, it's got to be one or the other. I've mentioned this before. I've never had a proper answer on it. Did we have vacancies, or was it actually full? We couldn't be one or the other. Now, if we now have vacancies, are they new vacancies, or they've always been as vacancies but never properly understood?
We do have vacancies at the Point, and I think the Point is quite difficult because, like, you probably get one unit vacant, and then someone will decide, even that's currently in the Point, to actually move to a different unit within the Point. But I think this is like reviewed by property themselves. So I think they bring a report to Governance Scrutiny Group where they look at the investment properties and just see if they are viable or not.
That's a quite important one to take away. I know it's not to do your report specific. I did say that right at the beginning. I think we need to understand that as to whether you're about to answer that question.
Well, I was just going to ask what your question actually is. So is it that you want to know if the Point has vacancies or if those vacancies have been permanent?
In previous reports, we were always told, not necessarily through this committee, but through other committees, possibly the Point was full, basically, right income stream, etc. Yet the signage at the top has said vacant for yonks. Was that an error, a mistake on someone's part? Were there actually vacancies, or was it actually full historically? Now that's changed. What's brought about that change? So we now have a drop in income. Have we lost tenants, short term, long term, or otherwise? I think we need a little bit of some work on that one. Not you necessarily, no.
Yeah,
I think,
I can't answer all. I can't answer all the details because I don't know the details to it. But I think the Point possibly has been full at a point. I can't say whether it's been full recently. I know that historically it has had vacancies where, as Marie says, somebody will move out, somebody will move back in, and then somebody else will move out. So I think it's a bit of a fluid situation, as with most office accommodation. There's demand, and then businesses may go out of business and things like that, which will determine whether somebody rents those units or not. The team do market them as soon as they become available. Whether the signs reflect that fluid position, I don't know. Whether the signs actually do, I imagine it's quite difficult to get out there and change the signs, and it changes again the next day.
My ladder doesn't reach up there.
I can ask the question, but I think at the moment there is 1 or 2 vacant units at the Point.
Okay, happy with that? Any more questions? No. Okay.
Can I just take the opportunity to remind you, as Marie said, the training for Treasury Management is on the 6th of January, mandatory for this group. So if you're able to note in your diaries, that would be great.
I send my apologies to them because I'm away. Presumably there'll be a catch-up facility available somewhere.
But we don't repeat the training, but there's usually some guidance. We can issue guidance notes or if you've got any specific questions.
Thank you.
Can the training not be recorded and Councillor Wheeler could then watch it back?
I'll look into it.
Brilliant, thank you. It's Councillor Wells.
Can you tell me what time the training is?
I think I've arranged it for 6 p.m. I'll double check though, and I'll send the appointment round.
Just 6 p.m. Okay, any more questions? No, okay, so we don't need to vote on this item 7, but thank you very much, Marie. Thank you for your presentation and thank you for fielding the questions very competently. Thank you very much. Right, we are recommended as the Governance Scrutiny Group and to note the comments as necessary on the capital investment strategy update position as of the 30th of September. So duly noted. Thank you very much. Okay, to item 8, it's over to Sarah Whittaker for the work programme.
Thank you, Chair. So there are, as you can see on page 79, the next meeting is in February. I can't remember the date exactly. Is it 5th of February? Yeah, so 5th of February next year. There are quite a number of items on the agenda. The last two, the external audit plan, Jenny alluded to earlier, hopeful to get the plan to that scrutiny group. That one is could possibly move to the next group after that, depending on whether external audit get that plan to us in time. And then the asset management plan also on for this agenda. Other than that, the rest of the reports are standard reports that you're used to seeing at these meetings. I'm proposing, if in agreement, to start the meeting a little earlier because we've also got the risk management training in advance of that meeting as well on the same day.
Okay, thank you. Is there any observations on Sarah's comments on requesting to start the meeting earlier for a start? Has anybody got an issue with that? And what sort of, how much earlier are we talking?
Probably 6, with the training maybe at 5, or perhaps the training at 6 and we start the meeting at the normal time.
Okay, right. So what you're saying is we've got enough time in the agenda, the normal agenda, to start it at 7 without us bringing our sleeping bags.
Yeah, that's right. We can start at 7. Like I say, it doesn't tend to take us significantly longer to get through the items, and then we could do the training at 6. Start the meeting at 7 as well.
Okay, I don't know with this windy chair you've got now, but yes, we'll endeavour to. Is everybody happy with that? Training at 6 and the meeting as normal. I'd rather not be hitting here at 5 if I'm perfectly honest, with traffic, etc. But yeah, there'll be a number of people struggling with their work commitments as well. So yeah, 6 o'clock for the training and then straight into the meeting. If the training well, we can't start the meeting early because it's scheduled online, so an hour's training and then straight into the meeting. Okay, thank you very much. Right, is that it, Sarah? Are you finished? Okay, well, I will close the meeting at 8:04 and wish everybody a Merry Christmas. Have a fantastic time if I don't see you